Welcome into week one of the 2023 NFL season. We're happy to have you here. If you're just now coming to the podcast because you're Googling football shows, that's Greg Cosell of NFL Films. I'm Buck Rising, and we're happy to be back with you for another football season. Greg, we made it, bud.
We made it. I am so excited. Well, I've been excited the last couple of weeks because of college football, but I'm so excited now about a game on Thursday night, which, should be a good one. And Titans open in New Orleans, which, from what I gather, you've not been to New Orleans, so I think you'll probably enjoy yourself.
I think there will be hurricanes and beignets on Saturday and a lot of football on Sunday. I look forward to both.
Beignets, my stomach is grumbling.
Well, it's exactly what I don't need if I got to be in a suit the next day. But either way, we're going to be watching and breaking down a football game. The Saints and the Titans, it's a great matchup. I do want to open with a little bit of news, though, Greg. Nick Bosa just agreed to a deal with the San Francisco 49ers. 5-year, $170 million. Money talk is not something that we do, but obviously a huge point of importance to retain him within that defense.
Yeah, I see he got Buck Rising money, so I was happy to see that.
Yeah. Well, I'm keeping tabs on things going around, Greg. I want to make sure, Nick Bosa is making Nick Bosa money for now. Maybe Buck Rising money one day.
Well, the guy's a great player. The money stuff, I don't follow that closely, as you know, because the money becomes the money, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It just, the salary cap goes up, and each time a great player, comes up for a new contract, he usually gets the most. So I'm just glad he's back. He's a great player. I'm hoping Chris Jones gets signed, and maybe in the next day or two. I just like to see the best players compete at the highest level.
Yeah, and it's going to be San Francisco and Pittsburgh to start the season. We'll get to
a good one as well.
Some games on the board because, of course, the NFL matchup show is back with Sal Pal, Darius Butler, and Greg. And you can set your DVRs, stream it on ESPN Plus.
I got to wear a suit on Friday, Buck. I'm back to wearing a suit every Friday for the show.
Is that the time of year now? Are you a multi-suit guy, or are you a change the jacket from time to time? But
no, I have many. I don't want to say many because obviously, as people can see, I do not need to wear that to just come to work in my office. But it's not as if I have one suit and just change the jacket. No, I've got a fair number. So yeah.
Listen, some people one speed.
Clearly, I'm not on the show for my looks. Clearly.
Well, whatever it is, it's a great show, and people love to come to it for Greg's insight and analysis, and Darius, and always good to see Sal Pal chopping it up and talking shop. But in the meantime, we'll start with the Titans and the Saints, Greg, and then we'll get to some other games on the board. Yep. I think the biggest thing here, if we can start with New Orleans offense versus the Titans defense, the return of Michael Thomas is fascinating to me. Chris Olave, I don't know how you view them, but he looks like the best best pass catcher on their football team right now. But I understand that it looks like Michael Thomas is ready and motivated to go for the first time in quite some time.
And I think that's a big deal because, obviously Alvin Kamara is not playing this week. Okay. So, but Thomas, to me, and he's not a burner, but he was really a good boundary X, meaning the single receiver to the short side of the field. He was physical. He was competitive. He could win one-on-one very often by just being strong and competitive as opposed to creating great separation with quickness. And he just created a lot of throws for the quarterback. Now, obviously, that was with Drew Brees, but he presents himself really well on his routes to the quarterback and makes the quarterback feel comfortable that he can deliver the football. And then when you add in Olave, who probably will become a little bit more of a movement receiver this year. That would be my guess. And when I say that, I mean motion. You'll see, I think, in motion. And then, assuming it's Rashid Shaheed at the third receiver spot, this guy can run. So they can stretch you vertically, and that's something you always have to be aware of because the last thing a defense wants to do is give up big plays. So, they do have, assuming Thomas is Thomas or very close to what he was, it's a pretty good receiving core. And we saw what Olave did a year ago. He's very smooth. He's an efficient route runner. He does have vertical ability as well. So they can stretch you. And that's really, really important because that dictates very often how you play coverage because you do not want to allow anyone to get over the top of you.
And of course, you mentioned they'll be without Kamara. They will have Derek Carr at quarterback. This will be his first season in New Orleans, working in this system. They seem to be very high on him and what he brings to the table from a trait standpoint at this stage in his career. Greg, what do we know about Derek Carr and what can he provide to this offense?
Oh, I think his traits have not dropped. I mean, there was a lot going on with the Raiders. Some I know about that I can't speak about. Other stuff I'm sure I don't know about. But I think he'll be rejuvenated. He throws the ball extremely well. He's got some mobility. Certainly they've struggled a bit at quarterback since Breeze has been gone in terms of just, obviously Winston got hurt a few years ago, and then it's been a little bit of a struggle. But Carr is a professional quarterback, can make every throw, can run an offense efficiently, can attack on all three levels. He's always been a little cautious, a little risk adverse, but they do have vertical receivers, so they will call those plays at times to attack over the top. And one player I think is really worth mentioning, who I feel is worth mentioning anyway, is I think Juwan Johnson at tight end is someone you have to be concerned about. He's a former wide receiver. He played wide receiver in college, both at Penn State and at Oregon, made the transition in the NFL to tight end, and he has seam stretching ability as well. This is a team that you definitely have to be concerned about the vertical element in their passing game.
And certainly the Titans, it'll be a good test for this Titans defense. We've talked about them, for months on end, Greg, and we'll finally see proof of concept. We know proof of concept basically from Shane Bowen and Mike Vrabel and what they like to do, the tendencies that they have, and a little bit difference in personnel this year, but not much. That is as interesting a matchup as there is in this game. I think the Saints receiving core, the Saints passing game against this Titans defensive secondary.
Yeah, you're talking about Titans pass game versus the Saints defense now.
I'm sorry, I said I meant the Saints passing game against the Titans.
Yeah. Secondary. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. And the other thing too, they've got a pretty good O-line. So they've got a lot of veterans now. A left tackle is Trevor Penning, who's a second-year player. He's someone I think you want to attack and see how that goes. One thing we know about Shane Bowen, again, assuming not dramatic change from a year ago, they're not a heavy blitz team. When a lot of the pressures are what we call sim pressures or zone exchange pressures, where you bring a second or third level player, but you still only rush 4. And very often they do that to try to create one-on-one matchups inside. So, obviously you'd love to get Simmons one-on-one, but, they have Andres Peace. He's a veteran, been in the league a while. They have Cesar Ruiz, who's a right guard. He's a good player. Eric McCoy is a solid center. We know about Ramczyk at right tackle. So Penning is the guy you probably want to attack both mentally and physically and see how he holds up. But this is a quality offensive line, Buck. So, I think this, again, it's the first game of a season. We know there's always 3 games that are totally weird week 1, that just, we look at the score and go, God, I didn't expect that at all, because it's week 1. And teams now in training camp and the preseason, they don't have a lot of practice time. They don't hit. So you just don't know. But, as you look at this Saints offensive roster and what they put out there, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, the biggest unknown in this game is probably the Titans on offense, and Dennis Allen is going to find some ways to come after them. You mentioned the offensive line for the Saints. The offensive line for the Titans is a work in progress as far as we know. We'll see how they fare against this Saints defense. But you mentioned the Titans not blitzing very often, Greg. Neither do the Saints. They don't need to. They're always very, very stout up front, and they do so with lighter boxes, which is something that the Titans often employ as well.
They're they're a really interesting defense. Dennis Allen, to me, and I don't, if you just talk to other coaches, they'll tell you how difficult it is to play against a Dennis Allen defense. And they're really, really good in pretty much whether they're playing base, whether they're playing nickel, and they play predominantly dime on third down. 55% of their third down snaps a year ago came out of dime. If it's third and long, which I view as 3rd and 6 plus, they play dime in 80% of their snaps. So they have one of the best linebackers in football in Demario Davis, and he's a veteran who's been doing this a long time. he's one of the reasons in dime that they can do a lot of the things they do, because they like to play what we call 3-2-6 dime. In other words, 3D linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 DBs. And Davis he's one of those guys you can move him all around. You can line him up on the ball. You can line him up off the ball. He can rush the quarterback. He can cover. His ability as a pass rusher is on third down. That's one reason that the Saints can be so multiple with their alignments and pressures on third down. And even though they're not a high percentage blitz team, they're very effective when they do. And you're not sure who's coming and who's not.
Which is not an ideal situation if you're a Titans offensive line group who's the thing you probably feel most confident right now is the rookie who's playing a new position for the first time this season, and Peter Skoronski, who's been really, really solid and has gotten some good work against Jeff Simmons and Denico Autry and Titans front in practice. But we know that Dennis Allen is going to be keenly aware of the Titans offensive line situation.
And one of the things Dennis Allen really does well, when it comes to defense, and I'm talking now mostly the sub defense, which they're not going to be in the whole game. Obviously, the Titans are going to line up. There'll be snaps with multiple tight ends. They're going to run Derrick Henry. We know that. It just depends on how the game goes. I'm sure to see how many carries that Derrick Henry gets, and we'll find that out, as in the game flow. But one thing about the Saints and Dennis Allen is he does a really good job of kind of tying up the center, and in his sub fronts. And, if you know that the center can be tied up and not help, then that creates some other opportunities for other, pass rushers. So we'll see how that plays out. You mentioned the light box. You're right about that. The Saints last year were among the highest percentage of 2 shell coverage defenses in the NFL. And by 2 shell, I mean that they played with split safeties, not a single high safety and the other safety in the box. But, they're a really, really good defense. They're a tough defense to play against.
And Tim Kelly, who's called plays in the NFL before, but will make his debut as the Titans OC in this game. It's not an easy problem for him to solve. But Greg, we've talked about the things that what we know about the Titans based on who they have on their personnel. We don't know deployment. That's not a question that we can answer yet. Yep. If you what I think is the question for you is, what are you most curious to see from the Titans on offense in this particular game? Is there a question that you want to see answered or that you're curious about, when you're considering this particular matchup?
Yes. I mean, and I think a lot of fans would probably agree with me. The known is Derrick Henry. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to rush for 150, but he's the known. I really want to see their pass game. And I want to see how it's used, how it's deployed. Will there be more first down passing? What are the formations? What's the personnel? Are they going to play more out of 11 personnel than they have in the past? Or is the pass game going to feature more 12 personnel, as we have seen in recent years? To me, the pass game is ultimately what has to take this team over the hump. They have a good roster, a really good defense, as we know. We've discussed that, a number of times. But I think, in order to compete in the AFC with the teams that are in the AFC, and as you know, there's many, many good ones that have really good quarterbacks and can score points, they're going to need to score. And just percentage-wise, you tend to score more with your pass game. You tend to create more explosive plays with your pass game. So I'm very anxious to see, the subtleties, the nuances, what they do with that. Against a good defense, by the way. This is not an easy task.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess Treylon Burks is trending towards being available. We got our first injury report for the audience today as we record this on Wednesday. Right now he's questionable, but he's been practicing. It looks like he's going to be ready to go. How they incorporate Hopkins with Burks, with Chig, Henry, and Spears, another unknown who I think is going to play a role in this offense, Greg. I think you were also able, in talking to people while you were here and taking in practice and having watched them during the preseason, Tyjae Spears is going to be one of the biggest variables I think that they have at their disposal.
It's going to be interesting because I feel like that the Saints are really good in their sub packages. Okay. So I'm wondering, and we'll see, maybe I'm totally wrong. And maybe Tim Kelly's not thinking this way at all. I know that knowing what I know from film study, and he's got to know what I know and more, obviously, because he's really, the whole staff's been obviously really focused on the Saints. I'd be really curious if they put Spears, and Henry out there together, what the personnel will be for the Saints. Will they stay in base, in which case I think there are some advantages for the Titans, or do they react to what we call a pony package, which is two halfbacks as opposed to a fullback? Do they respond to a pony package with nickel? That I think to me is one thing you want to find out early.
I can't wait to cover this game. I can't wait to be covering football games again, Greg, and then to break it down with you throughout the course of the next 18 weeks together, buddy. We got football all over the place. As you mentioned, by the time most people hear this podcast, it will be Thursday. It'll be time for the season opener between the Lions and the Chiefs. That won't be on the matchup show, but I took a guess at 4 games that I figured.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, and you'll probably be right.
Okay, I got the Bengals at Browns on the matchup show.
You know, we're struggling with that one, even though Burrow, everything is positive. Because we shoot the show on Fridays, the last thing we want to have happen, Buck, is all of a sudden, Saturday morning, he aggravated it and he's not playing. So we're struggling with that. Not because we don't want to do it, but unfortunately, that's what happens. We don't shoot live on Sunday morning, so we can't wait. So I'm not sure yet.
Well, and just because you're correct in saying just because he's saying that he's ready to go doesn't mean that they'll make him available and ready to go for week 1. So, but I have to imagine that the Cowboys at Giants is on the match.
Without question, that's in.
Buffalo at the Jets.
That is in. That's Monday Night Football. Yes.
How about Miami at the Chargers?
For sure. And people may remember that Tua had his worst game of the season last year against the Chargers. And there were a lot of reasons why. So, we'll speak to those in the show.
Well, and I guess the thing that I just to ask you a question about the Chargers quickly, with Kellen Moore coming in as the offensive coordinator there and Justin Herbert, now locked in for the long term in Los Angeles. Greg, what do you look? Those 2 quarterbacks are so fascinating just based on their career trajectory and obviously their skill set. But for Justin Herbert, what steps are you looking to see him take at this stage?
Well, it's funny because they lost that playoff game last year. There's been an off season where people have decided that, maybe Justin Herbert isn't the guy. And that just blows me away because the guy is a top 5 talent in the league at quarterback. We don't know what their offense is going to look like because it's a new coordinator. What we do know is their receiving core is big because they've got Mike Williams at 6'4". They've got Allen at 6'2". They've got Josh Palmer from Tennessee at 6'2". They drafted Quentin Johnston, who's 6'3" from TCU. So they have a really big receiving core. My guess is with Kellen Moore, you'll see more of an intermediate and vertical pass game, but we just don't know exactly. So, teams that have new coaches, whether it's head coaches, coordinators, or new people, we don't usually do that side of the ball in the matchup show week 1 just because there's a credibility issue. We don't know what it's going to look like. We're going to actually show probably Miami this week just because we don't know exactly what the Chargers offense is, or maybe we will. I know Darius is doing that game, and obviously you can certainly show their receivers because the receivers are a tough match. And obviously with Jalen Ramsey not playing, they still have Xavier Howard, who's a top flight corner, but they may feel they have matchups opposite Xavier Howard.
So from that standpoint, I then assume that it will be the Buffalo offense versus the Jets defense, or the Jets defense, that you'll be breaking down on the matchup show?
Buffalo Jets D, because they played twice a year ago. I'm doing that piece, and it's Buffalo Jets D, head to head.
Buffalo, with what they've tried to continue to, they keep trying to take the pressure off Josh Allen to run the football.
As they should.
He has to at some point. There's only so much that he can do to sustain, even though he is bigger, faster, stronger than a lot of guys on an NFL football field. But with Allen though, Greg, is it still kind of, I mean, we talk about Mahomes refining himself even last year when you think Mahomes is the best player at the position. How much better could he get? And all of a sudden he's playing the position as well as he has ever played it within the structure of their system. Josh Allen feels like there's still a lot of those moments where it's just like, bleep it, backyard football, I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I'm going to take off and run. How much of that is still a work in progress with Josh when you watch him on tape?
I would say that's a very fair point. He's a knockout puncher. He needs to learn a little more about the sweet science, so to speak. And I think that the tape shows that. And I think he's still working toward that. And I think that's one reason too why they probably did what they did in the offseason. They drafted Torrance, the guard from Florida, and appears he'll start at right guard, and he's a mauler. They signed Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. They feel like James Cook can take a step forward in his second year. I think they would like the run game to be more of a factor. They're not going to become a run first team, that everything works off the run game, but I think they feel like it can't be Josh Allen every week. Josh is obviously he's incredibly competitive and intense and can make plays that a lot of other quarterbacks can't. But he still needs to work toward the kind of consistency you're talking about, being more of a precision player on every snap. And you just have to assume he'll continue to get better in that area. But at this point, he's more of a knockout puncher than a 15 round work the jab kind of guy.
I didn't email you this question before, Greg, but it just popped into my head since we're at the start of another season and talking about new continuity with offenses, new coordinators coming in. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a coordinator or two that you're paying attention to this year in the league who you're curious about, whether they're in a new spot, working with different personnel, whether they've been in the league for a while and getting a different opportunity, or is there a name?
Well, there's two guys and two teams. One is Todd Monken in Baltimore, because that's going to look totally different. That offense is going to look totally different. And obviously they know what it's going to look like, but I don't, but it's going to be different. And the other one is with a veteran coach who's had phenomenal success, won a Super Bowl, and that's Sean Payton with Russell Wilson. Because Russell Wilson was not very good last year. And again, I'm not sitting here telling you Russell Wilson isn't a good quarterback or his career is over. We don't know any of that. But I'm very curious to see Russell Wilson operate in a Sean Payton offense. And I don't think any of us know exactly how it will play out, but to me, it's going to be one of the most intriguing tactical storylines of the season.
Love a good tactical storyline. That's what this podcast is all about. We're fired up for it. Greg, appreciate your time as always. Again, the NFL Matchup Show, must-watch television to get you ready for that week of football. Check it out on ESPN on Sunday mornings, on Saturday mornings. If you don't wake up like that early, you can DVR it. You can stream it on ESPN+. It's available for you on demand. Greg, enjoy week one. I can't wait to watch the Lions and the Chiefs tomorrow night, and I can't wait to talk about it with you next week.
Looking forward to it, Buck. Thanks.